Welcome back to another exciting episode of the LZBC podcast with our host Myrtle Fisher and Alan Ross. Today's topic is living a life that pleases God. Enjoy and be blessed.
All right, welcome back, everyone. We're diving deep today, getting into what it really means to live a life dedicated to serving God.
Yeah, and the source material we're looking at is really interesting. It's not just about, having faith. It's about action, too, how it all connects.
I like that, because sometimes it feels like it's one or the other,
Exactly, and that's what makes this so cool. I mean, the source really emphasizes that multifaceted approach, It all starts with building that personal connection with God.
Oh, yeah, that personal relationship thing.
Mm.
Honestly, that's always kind of thrown me off a bit. What does that even look like? Not just, showing up at church every Sunday, right?
Yeah. You got it. It's about going way beyond just the rituals and routines. It's about actively engaging. The source really stresses regular prayer, studying the Bible, really getting into it, and participating in worship. Those are the keys, right?
Yeah.
To understand God's will and really deepen that relationship.
So it's not about just sitting back and waiting for something to happen. It's we got to be reaching out.
Exactly. Think of it like any close friendship. You got to put in the effort, communication, shared experiences, all that. If you never talk or hang out, it's not going to be much of a friendship, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Same with God. You got to nurture that relationship.
That makes a lot of sense. And it kind of leads right into that next point the source talks about, living a life of obedience.
Right. It's believing is great, but you got to walk the walk. Yeah. It's about aligning your actions with God's teachings.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Following his commandments, demonstrating that moral integrity, always seeking guidance, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. But honestly, isn't that kind of tricky sometimes?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, life's not always so black and white. How do we deal with those gray areas where the commandments don't really give you a straight answer? What does obedience even look like in those situations?
You're right. That is a tough one. Lots of people struggle with that. And what the source really emphasizes is relying on prayer and discernment, especially in those tough spots.
So it's about finding that clarity.
Yeah, it's about seeking understanding, listening to that inner voice, trusting that God will guide us to the right path, even when it's hard.
Trusting the process.
Yeah.
But it's not all inward reflection, right?
Mm.
This source is pretty big on serving others being a core part of a God-dedicated life.
Absolutely. This is where your faith really becomes real, It's
Yeah.
how we express our love for God through our actions towards other people.
Right.
The source gives us a lot of examples: acts of service, showing love to our neighbors, practicing forgiveness, always striving for reconciliation. It's a lot to take in, but it's powerful stuff.
It's like that story of the Good Samaritan, classic example of putting your faith into action, helping those around us.
Such a good example. And then, the source also reminds us about sharing our faith journey with others.
Ooh, that's a tough one for some people. Makes them think someone's going to start preaching at them, But this source has a different take on it, right?
Yeah, for sure. It's not about forcing your beliefs down anyone's throat. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's about living your life in a way that reflects God's grace. And if the opportunity comes up, you can share your own experiences, talk about how faith has impacted your life. But it has to be genuine.
It's about connecting with people, not pushing an agenda. I get that.
Totally. And, that leads into the idea of personal growth, which this source is all about. It emphasizes the importance of constantly developing your spirituality.
Okay, so we've covered the basics.
Yeah.
But what's next?
Mm-hmm.
How do you go beyond those foundational practices? Where do you even start?
Well, the source suggests checking out some different avenues, like fasting, meditation, really getting involved in a faith community, and maybe even exploring some deeper theological studies. It's all about constantly learning and growing in your understanding.
A lifelong journey. It's like anything else you're passionate about, right?
Yeah.
The more you put in, the more you get out of it. But there are also some concepts in this source that are kind of hard to really wrap your head around, like humility and surrender.
Yeah, those are big ones. They're crucial to faith, but they're tough to put into action sometimes, like humility. It's about recognizing that serving God isn't about you. It's about putting his will before your own wants.
Makes
And
sense.
seeking his glory, not your own recognition. Tough, right?
Definitely. And surrender.
Yeah.
I got to admit, that one's always been a struggle for me. Letting go of control is way easier said than done.
I hear that. It's definitely a process. But surrender is all about trusting in God's plan, even when you don't get it. having faith that he knows what's best, even if it's not what you would have chosen.
It's like that saying, let go and let God. I like that. And that brings us to another really interesting point the source makes. Stewardship. But it's not just about money, is it?
No, it's about recognizing that everything you have, your time, talents, resources, all of it, it's all a gift from God. And we're supposed to use it wisely in a way that honors him.
So, what's your purpose? How can you use your unique gifts to contribute to something bigger than yourself?
Those are the questions, right?
Big questions.
Yeah. It doesn't matter what you do, your career, relationships, how you're involved in your community. Everyone has a part to play in God's plan. We all have something to offer.
Wow, we covered so much today. It's a lot to think about.
Yeah.
But the big takeaway is serving God isn't some cookie-cutter formula. It's this multi-layered journey of personal growth, taking action, and serving others.
And before we wrap things up, I want to leave you with this. Think about all the stuff we talked about today. And if you had to pick just one thing, just one area to focus on this week, what would it be and why? It's a good question to sit with and see how all these ideas can really play out in your life.
I love that. That's something for everyone to really chew on. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everybody. We'll see you next time for another exploration.
See you then.
Thanks you for joining us for another LZBC podcast. Till next time, keep the faith.